Okay,
Yes, sir.
great. Thank you, Hiral. We have at the moment 95 people, is still ramping. As I speak, the numbers are going up. Welcome all the participants, but most of all, let me extend a warm welcome. And in the month of May, it is getting warm, to Shri Shailesh Hari Bhakti, our chief speaker. And I will introduce you shortly, sir, and also the panelists, Mr. Manmohan Juneja, Mr. V.S. Sundaresan, who's yet to join, Ms. Savitri Parikh, who's also yet to join, Mr. Nagesh Pinge, and our moderator, Mr. Sanjay Asher, to this session. A colleague of mine from Bombay Chamber will also join anon, by name Sandeep Khosla. I will take this opportunity to say first a few words and welcome to all the participants who are logged in. At the moment, we have 104 of them. A few words about the chamber, and then I will introduce our chief guest as well as the panelists and the moderator briefly, and then leave it to the chief speaker to say a few words. The session today relates to corporate compliance in a renewing economy, the areas of forbearance, an interesting subject, and we look forward to that. But before I talk on that and introduce the speaker, the chamber is the oldest continuously operating chamber, Bombay Chamber of Commerce. It is going to celebrate its 184th year in the latter part of this calendar year. The good thing about being 184 years old is that all of us who are involved with it in some way feel forever young. I always keep repeating that exercise, that if you are 184 years old, you must be doing something right, and everybody who's involved with you must be forever young. Having said those two philosophical statements, what do we do? We have got several thousand corporate members, and all of the corporate members have some connect with the city of Bombay or Mumbai, as it is now very well known. The idea is they either have headquarters here or they have offices, branch offices, or some connects of interest. And therefore, in concentric circles, our interests are the city of Mumbai, the state of Maharashtra, the Indian nation, and the world at large. And as yet, we haven't gone beyond the boundaries of Earth, but given the fact that we are nearly 200 years, that would be shortly. Having said that, what do? Like most chambers of commerce, we do events and seminars where we try to cross-filter. We do our share of advocacy at the center, the state, and the municipal. We have special services, for example, certificates of origin offerings for exporters, dispute resolution offerings, as in the case of litigation, arbitration, and mediation. And we're trying very hard to push the case of mediation as an alternative way of reducing the turnaround time in commercial disputes. We just started with more than a dozen such cases that have come to us in recent times, and we are beginning to see reasonable traction in that space. We have multiple committees, but instead of talking about the historical activities of 200-year-old chamber, I will talk in the last 2 weeks, what have we tried to do. First of all, in the COVID situation, we have interfaced with about 5 hospitals, to name them: JJ Hospital, NM Hospital in Bashi, Kasturba Hospital, Nair Hospital, and now we are trying to extend to Sion Hospital. What do we do with them? We provide consumables, courtesy contributions by our members, both in cash and in kind. Examples: sanitizers, personal protection equipment, masks, specialized masks, face plates, and so on. In addition to these, as we reached out to the hospital, we found they were in need for specialized equipment. For example, JJ Hospital wanted X-ray mobile machines so that they could wheel the machine from floor to floor and move from COVID floor to non-COVID floor, rather than having fixed X-rays to enable patients to move. And we are happy to say that that exercise seems to have worked. We delivered some of this capital equipment. They include analyzers as well, and some breathing assistance equipment as well. So that's an example of what we've done in hospitals, courtesy contributions of our members. We've also conducted a series of webinars, on an average 1 a day. And I will just label a few that we've done in the last 10 days. A session on Indian economy during and after COVID. A session on legal considerations of COVID-19, be it force majeure or it be payment related or whatever employer-employee related. Sessions on rebuilding spaces in construction, infrastructure and real estate from a dispute resolution perspective. A session on activating trade within pandemic crisis. A session on impact on MSMEs. A session on banks and NBFCs. A session on understanding self in a social world. A session on opening the mind after lockdown, where we called a mental health specialist to tell us how that aspect is of interest to the general community at large within the corporate world. And going forward, corporate compliance in renewing economy, the session today, areas of forbearance. Going ahead, we have a session along with MEDC where Shri Nitin Gadkari is going to talk about what they have in store for MSMEs. A session on globalization and trade. I'm sorry, there is some background.
No, first get to speak.
Whoever is speaking, will you kindly mute? Thank you. I am done with talking about the chamber. Let me spend a few minutes introducing the key members who are here with us. To begin with, our chief speaker, Shri Shailesh Haribhakti. Will you please mute yourself? Kindly do not speak without muting. You're interfering with the communication. Thank you very much. Shri Shailesh Haribhakti is a career chartered and cost accountant, a certified internal auditor, a financial planner, and a fraud examiner. His career spans over 4 decades. He is currently chairman of Shailesh Haribhakti and Associates Chartered Accountants, besides being non-executive chairman of several enterprises, L&T Finance Holdings Limited, L&T Mutual Fund, Future Lifestyle Fashions Limited, NSDL E-Governance Infrastructure Limited, and Blue Star Limited. Other key directorship positions include Torrent Pharmaceuticals, Bennett Coleman and Company. I'm not using the word limited, so many of them have the same thing involved. Bajaj Electricals, Ambuja Cements, ACC, Gaja Capital Group. He also serves on the advisory group, boards of Doha Bank and Excellence Enablers Private Limited. In the past, he has been engaged in as chairman of the United Way of India, NPS Trust, Western India Regional Council of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, Financial Planning and Standards Board. As president, he was president of the Indian Merchant Chamber as well, the Rotary Club of Bombay, the Institute of Internal Auditors, and the Bombay Management Association. As member, he was a member of the SEBI Committee on Disclosures and Accounting Standards and the member of the Takeover Panel. He is also a member of the International Accounting Standards Board of the Standards Advisory Council, IASB. Mr. Haribhakti, welcome. We look forward to an enlightened session in your speech. Let me also introduce panel members that will follow the guest speaker, Shri Manmohan Juneja, who's with us here today. Shri Juneja is a chartered accountant from 1988, was practicing from 88 to 93. He joined the government through UBSC in 1993. He was started with assistant registrar of companies, including in Punjab, Himachal Pradesh, and Chandigarh. He was ROC cum OL in Jammu and Kashmir in the High Court of Jammu. He was deputy registrar of companies in Delhi and Haryana. He was registrar of companies in Punjab, Himachal Pradesh, Chandigarh. He was registrar of companies in Delhi and Haryana after that. He was joint director, Ministry of Corporate Affairs in the policy section in the years 14 and 15. He was additional director general, Office of the Director General of the Competition Commission of India, 15 and 16. He was again joint director, Inspection and Investigation, and director, Inspection and Investigation at MCA headquarters in 16 to 18. And is currently involved as regional director from March 18 in the Western region. He's had a vast experience in the enforcement function of the ministry, inspections and investigations, has been associated with MCA 21 project right from the beginning, has chaired the CSR steering committee, was chairman of forms committee, was chairman of syllabus curriculum for ICLS officers and many other groups and committees, including member of the committee for drafting the rules of the Companies Act 2013. He has been a key person on the accounting standard and the Ind AS. He represented MCA in the third Indo-Japanese Forum at Tokyo in Japan in 2012, Shanghai, China in IFRS in 2013, in XBRL at Singapore and several other forums. He's been a regular speaker in various seminars, including in many professional institutes. I will move on to Sri Sundareshan. Has Sundareshan joined us? I'm not sure, but I will read his profile briefly. He's had more than 30 years of experience in development, regulation, and protection. He's the executive director of SEBI, protection of interest of investors in Indian security market, and has worked in various departments in SEBI. Prior to becoming executive director in December 19, he had supervised more than 500 investigation cases on market manipulation, insider trading, takeover of companies, public issues, and several other areas during his 4+ years of stint as head of investigations. His past assignments include formulation and enforcement of regulations on issuance of securities, listing, takeover of companies, buyback, delisting, etc. Sri Sundareshan has been a member of various SEBI and inter-regulatory committees. He's delivered 25+ lectures in overseas seminars, 350+ lectures within India and on varied topics relating to the securities market. He's a graduate in commerce. He's also a postgraduate in finance and human resources and has a degree in law. He's also a certified associate member of the Indian Institute of Banking and Finance. The next panelist is Nagesh Pinge. He is an expert in ethics, corporate governance, risk management, and internal audit. He's a chartered accountant and law graduate from India, completed his executive education program from the Stephen M. Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan in USA. Career spanning 36 years, Mr. Pinge has worked with many organizations. He retired from Tata Motors in November 2016 as Chief Internal Audit, Risk Management and Ethics. Prior to that, he was Chief Internal Audit of Reliance Retail Limited and JSW Steel. Sri Pinge has also worked for ICICI Bank and its group companies in risk management as Chief Risk Officer, regulatory and compliance, as well as an internal audit.
Problem is that last time he came that
I am sorry. Shall I continue? Talking about Mr. Pinge. I hope I'll just read one more paragraph.
I think
Arvind Fashion Limited, Arvind Lifestyle Brands Limited, MCX Clearing Corporation, and several other enterprises. I'm also going to introduce Ms. Savitri Parikh. I'm not sure she's here yet. She has over 25 years of corporate experience and is currently Joint Company Secretary and Compliance Officer of Reliance Industries Limited. She has worked in a variety of sectors, including manufacturing, outsourcing services, private equity, media, pharma, textiles, and chemical. Ms. Parikh is a specialized editor of A. Ramaiah Guide to Companies Act 2015 and general editor to the MC Bhandari Guide to Company Law, again procedures, again 2015 and 2018 editions, published by LexisNexis, and a book on listing regulations. She is also a guest faculty at IIM Calcutta for over 10 years. He is a regular speaker at programs at ICSI, ICAI, Institute of Directors, Chambers of Commerce, etc. She happens to be the Vice Chairman of the Governance Committee of the Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry as well. She has been a member of the Secretarial Standards Board for over 4 years, up to January 2019. She is also a recipient of the Chevening Scholarship for Young Indian Lawyers and several other honors, which I will quickly brief through. After introducing Sri Parikh, I would like to introduce the session moderator, Sri Sanjay Asher, and then bring my session to a close. Sri Sanjay Asher is presently a senior partner with Crawford Bailey and Company. He is a practicing solicitor and a qualified chartered accountant, specializes in the field of mergers and acquisitions, cross-border M&A, joint ventures, capital markets, advises large, medium, and small businesses, serves as independent director on various public and private companies. He is a noted speaker at various seminars organized by several institutions, has also authored several publications published in national and international publications and authored a book on Companies Act 2013. I will end with 4 lines of poetry that I put together a few minutes ago. And the lines read this way: the era now upon us needs self-control and restraint. This applies very much to corporates as well. With a renewing economic need amidst new forms of constraint, welcome to this session. On the subject, will it dwell? Thank you very much. Welcome, and I'd hand this over to Manoj and after that to Mr. Shailesh Haribhakti. Welcome, participants and all the panelists and the chief guest, and Manoj, the organizer. Over to you, Manoj, and then over to Shri Shailesh Haribhakti.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vijay Sriranganji. Without taking much time, because we are already past 5:15, so I will directly request Mr. Shailesh Haribhakti, which everybody is eager to hear him out. So, Shailesh bhai, please go ahead with your keynote speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I have a very special bond with the Bombay Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Srirangan. When I was president of IMC, Nasser Munji was your president, and we worked very hard to bring the two chambers together. We actually had a couple of committee meetings together. You might not believe it, but that is the extent to which we had come close to each other. So I'm particularly happy to be here and very happy to hear about the fantastic progress of Bombay Chamber. It's like a homecoming for me from the WIRC point of view. I used to be chairman many decades ago, very ancient history. So it's in many forms a very sweet homecoming for me. Let us take a look at the COVID world and the post-COVID world. And let's draw a picture from it. The picture that emerges is that, without a doubt, all of us have accepted that we will have to move into the digital reality. We will have to start representing whatever we do physically in the digital world and do it as efficiently, perhaps more productively, and with what I like to now call one click. That seems to have become the mantra that everybody is trying to follow. And therefore, compliance cannot be left behind at all. So let me draw a little bit of a history of how our compliance infrastructure in our country has been built up. The amazing part of our compliance infrastructure that it is an extremely democratically built infrastructure. Many of the panelists here know that in framing the Companies Act and the various amendments and the complete overhaul recently, the participation of professionals and the participation of people from all walks of life was indeed absolutely remarkable. Look at the regulations of SEBI, or look at the functioning of the Reserve Bank of India or the IRDA. And in every space, what we have noticed is that compliance has been a bottoms-up process. We have all learned from each other. We have contributed to the whole evolution. And therefore, it is a vibrant kind of environment of compliance that we have built up. Just about 10 years ago, a whole lot of firms entered into the space of digitizing the enablement of compliance. Until today, it is almost impractical for a company of any significant size to do or meet its compliance obligations without a digital platform. That has become the reality. But as in everything else in our vibrant democracy, in our country of many, many parts, in our country with many, many differences between states, between regions, between villages, and all of that. What has happened is that the level of interface with the digital world has not been uniform. And therefore, even today, there are many situations where, because of the way compliance has evolved and because of the fact that there is a difference in the quality of digitization across the length and breadth of our country, we are stuck. And let me give you 5 instances of where we can be badly stuck in the time that we are going through. So, for example, it is an absolute requirement now that for transfer of shares to happen, they have to be dematerialized. Now, some of the private companies in which transactions are now beginning to happen in a big way, it is very difficult to access one's office, to go there, pick up a physical share certificate, take it to the office of NSDL, and have the share dematerialized. So one has to wait till the lockup opens. Now, this is a situation that should not happen. Take a probate, something that Sanjay Bhai would be extremely familiar with. Today, you can't obtain during this lockdown period a probate without the documents actually being physically produced. Take the case of contracts, complex contracts. It becomes extremely difficult to access them, to collaboratively work on them, to close a negotiation, or to do anything which involves the sharing and collaborating of documents over large numbers of people. And so this little space that is there, this arbitrage opportunity which is there, will need to be fulfilled. And when we were conceptualizing this title, the idea of forbearance was not so much in terms of giving more time for a particular process or making sure that penalties would not visit if there was a bit of a delay. All of those things have been taken care of, and I don't need to repeat them. Today, we live in a world where we simply don't need to remember anything. The task before us always is to be able to ask the right questions, because the answer is always available in cyberspace. And so the onus has shifted in terms of the forbearance to ramp up to a common digital, fully digital platform where all of us feel comfortable dealing with everything that is dematerialized. Take life policies, insurance policies. Why should they not be carried on your mobile phone in the dematerialized, digitalized format? That has to be enabled, because there are so many events in life that happen without any warning that it becomes incumbent to make sure that we are in a position to work in a seamlessly digital world. And therefore, the forbearance that we need to bring about is not just in the time for compliance or in the somewhat incomplete ways in which we might not be able to perform the compliance obligation, but in terms of making sure that we can deal with every aspect of life in its digital form. Let me share 2 stories which have struck me and which are very contextual to today's subject. One is a story of Mr. J.R.D. Tata and Mr. Sumant Mulgaonkar visiting Germany way back in 1945. That was the time when Germany was ravaged by the Second World War. It was a defeated nation. Unemployment was rampant. Even the basic food, protection of life, residence, none of those things were available. So they were offered while they were in Germany by, I won't name the company because that'll rob me of my later punch, that employees from their company be taken back to India by these two venerable gentlemen and give them the spirit to be able to rehabilitate themselves, to be able to contribute to doing what they were best at, which was to build locomotives. So they were taken back to Pune and were put to work in what was then called the Tata Locomotive Company, which then, of course, became Telco. It morphed into making of other kinds of vehicles much later. Their early history was building locomotives for the railways. The first orders for the railways, locomotives in independent India were executed by these very engineers who Tatas had respectfully transported to Pune, given them housing, given them food, given them respect, made them feel that they could start contributing again in this field and the domain that they were good at. Now, more 70. Suddenly, this company, which had then morphed into a very successful global enterprise, received an offer from the Tatas to make compensation for the fact that their technology was used by them in their initial history to build and supply locomotives to independent India. They were absolutely stunned. But the moral and the lesson of this is that we all need to learn to do the right thing, even though it may not be part of a contract. And therefore, the word forbearance has to be looked at from both its parameters. Forbearance to wait, to tolerate, and forbearance to actually want to deliver and do what is right and what is good for the time that you're living in. And I believe that this is the kind of environment that all of us together in chambers of commerce, in professions, in regulatory spaces can come together and build. Because what this needs is that kind of collaboration and that kind of trust and faith in each other that we will do the right thing, because that's the DNA that we want to create through an evolutionary compliance mechanism. The other story I want to narrate is also from the Tata Group. Take Tata Consultancy Services. This morning, they have committed, or they have declared, that going forward, almost 75% of their workforce would attempt to work from home. Now, just imagine the logistical, the cybersecurity, the compliance, the amazing amount of digitalization that this kind of a commitment will take. This takes great confidence, great boldness, and it takes an extraordinary company like TCS to be able to publicly make a statement like that. And all of us trust that yes, they will do it. That is what I believe is at the bottom of the environment that we need to create. We need to create this environment of confidence, of trust, of ability to rise to the digital challenge, rise to every challenge that the world will pose before us, make sure that we will overcome, because we are ready to collaborate. We are ready to trust. We are ready to work in an environment that is fully digital. And so, ladies and gentlemen, my single message to everybody on this panel is let's come together. Let's work together. Every part of Indian society, every professional needs to have this tremendous motivation to make sure that we can show the world what we can accomplish in a post-COVID, fully digital world. And my last sentence that I would like to mention is that if we come together, we have enough confidence and the spirit that India jeetega, Corona harega. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shailesh bhai. Now, may I request Mr. Sanjay Asar, who is a moderator for the session, to take over and start his opening remarks and then question answer with the panel, please.
Good evening, friends. We've heard Shailesh bhai with all his usual. He's always passionate about what he says, and he has already started the torch by already warming up, not only warming up, but more than warming up as to what would be the regime of compliance post-COVID and what all steps we as professionals, we as the regulators would do in order to fight this difficult situation and show the world that we may be considered as emerging markets, or we may be considered where life is not so precious, but we have fought this particular dreadful disease, this particular dreadful event so very bravely, without much of casualties to human life, not too much of casualties to economics as well, and to the economy as well. And so therefore, my point is that we have the documentary compliance or compliance of law. It's not only the compliance of law which is important. I'm not trying to undermine the importance of compliance of law. But compliance, we as professionals, we as entrepreneurs, we as businessmen, we as employers, we as regulators have to the society at large as well. Now, there have been several discussions, several webinars, several articles which have been written as to what happens to the contracts between two parties, the commercial contracts. What happens to the wages? What happens to the contract labor? What happens to the daily laborer? What happens to such similar events which occur on a day-to-day life? What happens with the health workers? I would say that is also the compliance requirements. We owe our duty to all of these issues as well. Issues, I would mean, our obligations to the counterparty, our obligations to our employees, our obligations to the contract laborer, our obligations to the regulators, our obligations for the purposes of completing various compliances which are required. Now, there have been views which have been expressed that, look, there is a force majeure event which has happened, and therefore one cannot comply with the parts of the certain contracts. Views have been expressed that, look, Section 56 of the Contract Act or the force majeure contract does not kick in because it's not an event which is not considered under the Section 56 or under a force majeure clause. In the M&A transactions, we have what is known as the material adverse effect or the material adverse event clause, which is there. And so people, whether it's seller or the buyer, may try to wriggle out of the particular contract. My point being that compliance, yes, compliance of law, compliance of document which is required to be filed with the regulators. So in substance and in form, both the compliances will have to be done. Having said this, let me first pose a question to Savitriben, because she is associated and she is the compliance officer of the India's largest organization. And therefore, some of the challenges which she may be encompassing during the last 1 month, and her view as to if this particular period goes on for another 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, or if it gets into a W shape, it goes, it comes, it comes, it goes. What is her view in order to be prepared, or in order to take actions, in order to take steps for the purposes of fighting this, for the purpose of forbearing this?
Thank you very much, Sanjay bhai, and thank you, Manoj, and to the organizers. It's an excellent forum to be having this interaction. Talking of the current situation, I would say that working from home is not very easy, because all of us are used to the comfort of working from an office, which is completely away from from our respective homes. So what happens is you have some kind of a mental divide between the two physical spaces, and this is actually quite important because it allows you the time to think, to carry on with your regular activities the way you would like to, sitting in an office. Having said that, this has been an exceptional period where all of us have had to grapple with the situation. And it's been one where you're sitting at home, but you're possibly locked up in a room for a major portion of the day because you're working from home and working on office related matters without the support that you normally have. Yes, it is not very easy. However, one of the major enablers has been technology. If you've adopted technology, you certainly have some kind of history on which you fall back upon. Having said that, the first thing that a compliance officer would think of is about compliances. And therefore, when you have the forms to be filed, you don't have the digital signatures very easily accessible. You know, it is at some other person's place, and you then are trying to make things work by collating, coordinating, getting things organized, which is not something which would have ordinarily been your day's job. I would now move on to the most important changes which have happened, which have actually enabled, and I would grant the government as well as SEBI a very big thumbs up, because they have very proactively supported industry. This has been one where, if you actually see the circular on EGMs, it's been little before it was asked, and also they did away with the posting of physical notices, which actually would have posed a huge challenge. So this is a time where all of us are seeing the regulators working with industry, and we all are able to move ahead only because there have been so many other enablers which have been put in place. To begin with, MCA came up with the CFSS scheme, which gave us the opportunity to file the papers right up to September. There are a good number of small organizations who may not have taken all the precautions of getting the digital signatures home. Probably some of them don't even have laptops where they can quickly work on. So, working for a large organization, the whole team is well connected. So it's not been so much of a problem from that perspective. But yes, coordinating, it's not very easy. Nothing is impossible, but at the same time, it's a bit of a challenge. And answering your last question as to what happens if it's a W, It's going to take much, much more. And I think all of us are just waiting for a break for 2 days to be able to go to office and collect all those papers and books. While we do have everything at the click of a mouse in the form of websites, but all the same, I think the touch and feel of a piece of paper to read something is completely different. And I'm sure the smiles on the panelists clearly shows that they echo the same views. And also sitting across is different. You close a lot of things sitting across the table. And when you do a meet, just as we're doing right now, it's good, but at the same time, it's not just the same. But having said that, yes, things are moving, but the pace is different. Thank you.
Very true, Savitri-Ben. Thank you for that initial insight. I would summarize that yes, we have certain inconveniences which we are experiencing to the touch and feel of paper, right from the morning newspaper to any notifications, to any office paper or any reading material, whether it is for office purposes or otherwise, which we are missing. We require a 2-day window whereby we can just run to the office and collect whatever we would want to in order to remove that inconvenience, and in order that we are as if we are back into the normal office mode. Also, you touched upon that although we are participating in meetings, but that meetings are through the electronic mode and not through the physical mode. And the physical aspects of the meeting is getting missed. Now, having said that the physical aspect of the meeting which is getting missed, we will come back to you on that as to how does it affect the compliance or the decision making aspect of missing the physical aspect, missing certain papers with you on the table, because even though you have 2 screens or 3 screens with you, you are just juggling with the 2 or 3 screens which you have. One which you are focusing on the screen when you're participating in the meeting, the other screen we are opening for the purpose of referring to your newspapers, for the purpose of participating in the meetings, etc. So I'll come back to you after I go back to Mr. Manmohan Juneja, and I must laud MCA and SEBI for the purpose of quickly getting into action and issuing several clarifications, relaxations, and measures which will help the corporates for the purposes of compliance. And considering that we are at the fag end of the year, at the beginning of a new fiscal year, where several compliances are required to be done by corporates, whether it is in the forming, whether in the accounts, whether it is completing the audits, etc. Now, Mr. Juneja, you have clarified, rather MCA has clarified, that there may not be a need of a physical meeting if you are giving a postal ballot and the electronic mechanism for everybody to participate in the voting, which a corporate may be convening for the taking decision. Now, having said this, there will be instances where corporates may have to have the annual general meetings very shortly. Now, considering that the shareholders will be spread across the entire country and entire world, how do you expect the corporates to comply with the provisions of conducting an annual general meeting? Will the e-voting and the postal ballot be a sufficient compliance if the companies conduct their meetings or convene their meetings through e-voting or through postal ballot. That is number one. Number two is the physical challenge of getting the notices, the annual accounts printed and posting it or couriering it or sending it to all the stakeholders, to all the shareholders, to all the members of the company. Consider a situation that this particular phenomenon or this pandemic goes on until July, August. What is it that the MCA is expecting out of the corporates? I don't want to put you in a spot, but you being the person at the MCA, what do you think the companies should do, and what do you consider, or what message will you take to the Shastri Bhavan at MCA, keeping in mind the present situation?
Thank you, Sanjay. Before I answer your specific questions, am I audible?
Well, sir.
Yeah, you are.
Okay. So before I answer your specific questions, let me first apprise the participants on what we have done initially at our end. Now, digitization is already the mode of business as far as MCA is concerned. We have years back shifted from paper compliances to end-to-end paperless compliances. The first thing we did was that we from on our side started working from home. MCA 21 was included, MCA 21 registry was included in the essential list on the second day of the lockdown. And it was a challenge, providing facilities to our officers at home, providing them VPN facilities, shifting or providing them good connectivity, shifting hardwares, configuring hardwares and things like that. But we could not do it for whole of the staff, but we have done it for some percentage of officers and staff. And in Mumbai itself, probably you'll be happy to know that in the first month itself, we have disposed of over 4,000 applications and forms working from home. And if we take the whole region, Western region, the figure is much more than higher. Pune, Goa, and all those offices. And all over India, there are hundreds of applications and forms are getting disposed of by our officers working from home. MC has taken various initiatives. Like you said, that we have allowed, certain businesses to be conducted, through electronic and digital modes. Physical meetings are not necessary up to a certain period. We have also taken suggestions from various chambers and industry associations. The secretary himself has taken, more than one meeting through VC and taken various suggestions. I was also participating in that meetings. There have been plenty of suggestions from various quarters, from professionals, from business associations, starting from, suggestions like changing the financial year, suggestions like you said that what will happen to AGMs which are ensuing. No, all I can say is that we are passing through transition mode. Things are changing every day. Things are changing every hour, and new things are coming up. We have not yet, taken any final decision on the AGM front, which you are saying that how the AGMs will be conducted and how the notices are to be dispatched and things like that. Certainly, this is in our consideration. We are thinking over it, and shortly we'll take a final decision. We'll definitely, we are looking at what is emerging, how this COVID things are taking shape in the times to come. If it goes on some more time, certainly we'll take a final decision and we'll try to address this problem. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Juneja, for this clarification. Indeed, MCA has quickly turned around and issued circulars in order to address the specific difficulties or the general difficulties which corporates would be facing for the purpose of compliance of various provisions of Companies Act. We have a very interesting provision under the Companies Act, which is Section 459 of the Companies Act. If you can provide me, if I can provide me for a minute, I'll just pull that out. It's a very interesting provision, and if I may be permitted to read that for a minute, and which was there under the old act as well. It says powers of the central government or the tribunal to accord approval, etc., subject to the conditions and to prescribe fees on application. Where the central government, which would be MCA, or tribunal is required or authorized by any provisions of this act to accord approval, sanction, consent, confirmation, recognition to or in relation to any matter, or to give any direction in relation to any matter, or to grant any exemption in relation to any matter, then the central government.
Yes, Mr. Sanjay. You know, invoking Section 459, we had brought out a scheme called Condonation of Delay Scheme in 2016. You know, when after we had, started striking off companies, and after we had been flagging the directors as disqualified on the request received from various quarters. We are aware of these provisions, and there are enabling provisions. You know, there is no problem as far as enabling provisions under the Companies Act are concerned. We can use these provisions wherever and whenever we feel that certain relaxations and condonations and reduction and fee and all those things are required. We'll definitely invoke these provisions.
Perfect. So therefore, one will be able to, if I can take the message back to all the participants, that surely Section 459 will come to our rescue in the event there is something because of the.
Sanjay, all I'm saying is that Section 459 is an enabling provision, certainly. And there are other provisions also where the government is empowered to exempt, the government is empowered to give condonation. So as the things unfold, we'll be taking a decision.
Perfect. That's it. Move to Mr. Sundaresan. That SEBI also has taken several steps for the purposes of extending time limits for the purpose of convening the meeting of the board of directors, which had to be completed by 31st of May, which is now got pushed back to 30th of June, and several other relaxations or several other measures for the purpose of relaxation of time, including for the capital markets, whether it is an IPO or whether it is a rights issue. However, there are certain difficulties which the corporates are facing or may face. Now consider a situation that pushback, and the most discussed topic is in relation to the insider trading regulations. That the window closes the moment the year ends, and it opens only after the 48 hours after the board has approved or adopted the accounts. Now, where the markets are low, obviously the promoter, in order to build confidence in the stakeholders and in the market, would want to do creeping acquisition so that the investor confidence is also reaffirmed or is reinforced. Why can't we consider a situation, or what was the thinking, that if 30-day window, a 30-day relaxation has happened or has been granted for the purpose of having the conducting the board meeting why can't a relaxation in relation to acquisition of shares during this particular period also be permitted, or some measure may be available for the insider or the connected person in order, or the promoter, to acquire the shares during that time as well?
Good evening to all of you. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
You are.
Okay.
You are.
I thank you very much for this opportunity to participate in this seminar, so that we can share our views, and we can also take back what are the expectations from the industry, so that we can do more than what we have done so far. So first of all, on this insider trading regulations, as you rightly said, whether there was COVID or not, the window has to be closed from 1st of April. Forget whether there was a lockdown from 25th March or not. Now, the extension was granted for enabling the companies to publish the results from the earlier, what you call a deadline of May, by one more month. There is nothing which stops the company from declaring the results in the normal course. For example, if you are aware, one of the leading Nifty 50 companies about 10 days back have already declared their results. If SEBI had allowed the window to be kept open, because it is not possible for the regulator to know which company has its results in advanced stage, which company has its result which has not been prepared even at a preliminary stage. So in that situation, it will be a challenge that who traded with the UPSI, who had traded not with the UPSI. Now the second reason is, this lockdown, everything started from 25th of March. That means for the financial year 1920, the promoter or the KMPs or the insiders, whoever they are, aware of the position of the company for close to 11 months and 24 days. What is going to happen in the next 6 days, that is when the lockdown was announced, is not the only determining factor to know what is going to be the bottom line or what is going to be the major financial ratios of the company. So if we allow the people to trade during the month of April, just because there is a timeline given to publish the results due to certain lockdown, or the auditor may not be available to confirm or verify the records and other things, it will create a situation where the people who are the so-called insiders will definitely be in a better position and possess certain information which is not available to the general public at large. So it will definitely create an asymmetry of information which is to be avoided, and that is the objective of the regulatory framework. Now the point is that there are, whether COVID or not, the window would have remained closed for, say, assuming that in a worst situation, a company publishes the result on 29th May. So till 1st or 2nd of June, the window would have remained closed, irrespective of COVID or not. Now, citing COVID as the reason and the relaxation given for publishing the results, nothing stops a company from, say, for example, company like Reliance, where Madam Savitri is representing. Do you think that just but for the because of the lockdown they will be publishing results in 21? I don't think so. They will definitely gear up themselves and try to comply with that, whatever was the original schedule they had. So allowing people to trade during April, which anyhow they will definitely be in possession of UPSI, and on the pretext of COVID, giving them a relaxation will totally defeat the purpose of the regulations.
Mr. Sundar, I agree with you, Mr. Sundareshan, but let me try and give you some views which I have in my mind. For example, if SEBI would have relaxed that even after 31st of March, because of this peculiar situation of the market being where it is, and in order to give a fillip to the market, if an insider is buying shares, even after the accounts is closed, but before the accounts are adopted by the board of directors, it would give, for example, 7 days notice in advance, what quantity or up to what percentage it is buying, so that the world at large is also on the same has the same information as the insider has. What could happen then is it would help both the investors and the promoters or the insiders to acquire the shares even after the year end, but before the accounts have been adopted by the board of directors. So if a time frame is given that if I want to buy on 10th of May, I'll give a 10 days notice that I'm going to buy up to 1% from the open market. And if that information is disseminated, all the stakeholders are at the same level, just as you have your trading plan. What do you think if some such measures, because going forward also, we may have a W situation and we may have a situation where the market may go, nobody knows, one can never time the market. But therefore, what happens in a situation where there are opportunities, the market requires certain support, the shareholders' confidence also has to be built in. What is your view, whether it would be counterproductive or it would help for the purposes of compliance as also for the purpose of giving a fillip to the market as well?
Okay, so effectively what you are suggesting is a modified form of trading plan which is available as a defense mechanism in the existing regulations. Because today the trading plan mechanism has certain characteristics, like you have to give minimum 6 months notice, then you have to wait for 6 months for the UPSI to get absorbed, and then the window period is 1 year. So basically you are telling, similar to that concept, you give us a different type of concept, and which during that can be made use of by the insiders. Am I right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Yes. So that can be thought of after the regular period of window, which would have anyhow been closed from 1st April to 2nd of June, irrespective of whether COVID or not. But asking for a blanket, what you call non-closure of window, was said to be no by SEBI. Nobody, to be very frank, I mean, when we had a detailed discussion with the what you call industry body, nobody asked for this modified trading plan scheme. Everyone wants window should be open, and I should be given free hand to free field to trade, which is the objection of SEBI. If this COVID continues and to some extent the accounts are being finalized but could not be audited, could not be made known to public, or due to some other reasons, if post the usual trading window closure, if there is a mechanism to enable people to trade, definitely on, I mean, though I may not be able to commit on behalf of SEBI, but definitely since this administration of this insider trading comes under my department, which I am heading, my work will be to facilitate such type of a scheme.
Absolutely, understood. Let me put now, taking this forward, because it's a governance issue as well. Let me take this to Mr. Nagesh Pinge, that he, as an independent director sitting on the board, what views does he express that in the event there is a relaxation which has been given to the promoters or to the insiders or to the connected person on this particular aspect for the purpose, my only purpose is to give a fillip to the market, to restore investors' confidence, and in order to see that the market does not slip further. What is Mr. Nagesh Pinge's view? Nagesh, what would be your view from a governance perspective? You sit on the board of large entities as an independent director. You have been the compliance officer and the internal auditor of the largest commercial vehicle manufacturer in the country. So what do you think? What steps can one consider in order that there is a compliance, at the same time it is balanced? Freedom for the purpose of promoters or insiders to acquire shares, at the same time compliance, not only in form but in substance as well.
Thank you very much, Sanjay Bhai, for asking this question. I am sitting on quite a few boards, and it is wide variety. Of course, Ministry of Corporate Affairs certainly come in all the companies, but we also have two regulated entities. One of them is stock exchange, and another one is the bank, where RBI and SEBI has been helping us out. So first of all, I must say the sort of cooperation both these regulators, including NCS, the third one, is giving it to us during this time for all my 8 companies is fantabulous. So the sort of responses that we are getting, the sort of, I would say, consents and the certainly, I would say, market friendly kind of thing they are doing it, but keeping in mind holistic approach towards everything. One thing we should remember that, it's like playing cricket. Whether you see the test cricket or whether you see even 10 to 20, the people who score runs are the ones who always score between that V. And if you realize it, if you are going to be using your fundamental way of looking at it, I think the balancing of all the interests is important for any company. And I think in that context, I always believe that an independent director and also the board should look at it on a holistic basis for everything. So if you are asking me this question, should we only look at the market related activity? I would say I would much rather request the board to concentrate on their performance. What are their challenges which are currently happening, rather than looking only as a market related factor. Market, according to me, should be the end result of whatever we are doing it in the organization. And in that context, I must say, and taking hint from what Shailesh Bhai talked about, unless and until you have right kind of digitalized mechanism in your organization, you will not be able to command premium now going forward. People are going to look at your corporate governance framework in a right kind of perspective. Do you have a digitalized platform for monitoring your regulation? Is something you have to look at it. And today, I must say that because I have been associated with quite a few companies as a private equity player, any company which has more than 600 crores of turnover, I have seen invariably they have a digitalized kind of model of looking at the compliance related part. So from that perspective, I always believe that we must request the board management not to look at only single kind of perspective to look at the market. They have to look at it at a holistic perspective. And in that context, we have always been telling everybody that don't just look at market as a philosophy, look at how I can serve my shareholders overall, how I can look at serving my ecosystem, which is there, which is very critical. Today, ESG, which is the environment and other parts like social related part will play a prominent role more than playing it to the gallery of the narrow-minded kind of stakeholder. This is my view. And I think if you look at it, most of the companies, like for instance, where I was working in my organization, which was the largest commercial vehicle manufacturer, we were always commanding premium despite a little depressed performance number of times. That is because people have always given weightage, and that is where Shailesh Bhai actually talked about the group from where I come. I retired from Tata Motors. I think we always believe that play on a holistic basis that helps you in creating right kind of thing. So this is my response to you.
So this is, Nagesh, I agree with you that digitalization will be the order of the day going forward. No doubt about it. Every organization, every entity, every business which is absolutely on the top of digitalization will be able to be competent in order to fight competition or in order to serve the various stakeholders. I also agree with you that compliance and governance is at the topmost, then the requirement of the market or to support the market. And if governance and compliance are there, automatically the value will automatically come, undoubtedly. It was only considering the temporary phenomenon, a temporary phenomenon of this COVID, and the relaxation in the event one wants to acquire shares. So it was only on that context. I completely agree with you that governance is pivotal, compliance is absolutely necessary, digitalization is the order of the day. Let me then again turn back to Savitri Ben. We are already, Manoj, what time do we have? We are at 6:15, and how many what time have you kept for the purpose of question answers? Will I have a chance to ask one questions to each of the panelists?
Yeah, please go ahead. No issues with that.
Okay, thank you. Savitri Ben, what would be, I will put this question in a very general form. Reliance has always been the torchbearer or the leader on everything, whether it is compliance, governance, business, finance, everything. And everybody looks to Reliance for advice, guidance, or try to follow what they do in order to see that they also become like Reliance. What would be your advice that you are associated with the largest organization in the country? What would be your advice to the industry or to the corporates or to the professionals, considering that we will have in a W mode, or we may, or this particular phase may go away? Going forward, what measures should the corporates and professionals take in order to be on the top of such a situation?
Thank you,
Compliance,
Sanjay.
governance perspective.
Yeah. So from a compliance perspective, history becomes very important. For example, even if it's a simple document which needs to be filed with the stock exchange, if it was business as usual, one would immediately check it with the last disclosure made, and which you therefore need to check with the documents that you have in your files. Just as was mentioned a little while ago, digitization has become the imperative word. I would not call it a word, it is an imperative world that we are living in, where digitization is the basic thing that we need to do. And just as we have physical files, it is necessary to replicate everything in a digital form in a manner where you can easily retrieve it. Because when you put something in digital form, it's one where it can just get lost unless you have properly indexed it. And I think all of us probably have been relying heavily on physical files rather than on digital files. And the time has come for us to rely more on digitization, virtual data, and be able to work. And talking of the interfaces, of course, with respect to decision making, given the multitude of laws and compliances in the country, even if you have a tool, it is necessary to be able to exercise the discretion and decision making by exercising judgment, which of course needs to be done by the persons concerned who are handling it, because situations are dynamic in our country. But reliance on tools and automation, probably, this is possibly one of those places where chatbots and artificial intelligence being used in the legal and compliance space is going to become the next thing. And it will possibly give you a beep, not in terms of just the tools, but in terms of saying that, look, these are the 20 things which need to be done. For example, even with respect to all the deadlines getting shifted, how does one proactively check whether you are filing the right form? Also, with respect to One of the features of the change which was introduced by SEBI and a relaxation given by SEBI is with respect to filing of forms with SD. It might sound very small, but I think it's a sea change which they made by saying that documents can be filed. Now, there's a basic thing of authenticity of these documents and how does one ensure it. And that's exactly where the automation done by the stock exchanges comes into play, and which ensures that you only can file it and upload it if you have an OTP which is given to one of the registered numbers. These small changes have gone a long way in supporting compliance. Of course, this is just one stray example that I've given. There are several like this which we need to take it to the next level. And as was being mentioned, compliance, according to me, is the first stage of governance. Governance is a little more than that, and that's a journey, and we need to move up. And for doing that, automation is something which we need to espouse in every work, and in particular with respect to compliance functions. Thank you.
Thank you, Savitri Ben, for your insight on this. So, Juneja, I would now turn to you for a similar question. What would be your suggestion or your advice to the professionals and to the corporate, considering that the COVID situation may go on for a while, from a substantive compliance and documentary compliance? Whether it is conducting the board meeting, because the board meeting may not be get physically convened. All the necessary documents may not be readily available. There could be bandwidth issues, internet issues. So what would be your advice, your views, in order that the corporates are prepared completely for the purpose of substantive and documentary compliance?
Look, as far as Companies Act is concerned and the working of the Companies Act is concerned, there are two parts of it. One part is G to C, government to companies, like interacting with ROC and MCA. That part is already fully digitized with paperless end-to-end interaction. The other part is, of course, company to its stakeholders, where company interacts and fulfills their responsibilities towards their stakeholders. That is partly digitized as of now. But of course, like in Companies Act, the shares of listed companies were already digitized. There was an enabling provision where the central government could make it mandatory for demat form as far as other public limited are concerned. We are looking at avenues where we can implement it even for private companies by amending the act. So the other part where the company deals with its various stakeholders, whether it is by way of board meetings, whether it is by way of company meetings, certain class of companies are already enabled and they are already empowered to conduct general meetings through e-mode. But certainly if a situation like this, drags for, let us hope that it ends soon. But if it goes on for a longer period, each professional and companies have to rise to this occasion to use all digital modes. And of course, market forces will bring in solutions, digital solutions, platforms, bandwidth, and everything. I think India is a vibrant society where we have experience and we have precedents of meeting these challenges. I'm very hopeful that we'll meet this challenge also and we'll pass through it with flying colors.
Thank you, Mr. Juneja, for your insight or advice to the professionals and corporate. So, Naresh, now my question is to you that nobody would know what's going to happen in the next 3 months, 6 months. How many manufacturing organization would get relocated. I mean, the sourcing would then happen into India instead of China, or they may want more than one sources. There would be issues surrounding that. And therefore, the companies would necessarily will have to raise capital for the purposes of setting up or for the purpose of expansion, whatever that may be. What would be your piece of advice from the raising of capital perspective to be readiness, keeping in mind the present COVID situation, as also how do they interact with SEBI while filing their letters of offer or DRHP, or what steps should they take, considering that you have vast experience as a regulator? I'm not wanting to know as to what SEBI is planning to do or any of that thing, but considering your wide experience and considering the present situation, what is your advice to the business entities for the purpose of being ready for the purpose of capital raising?
First, my general view is that the market participants, whether it is a listed company, whether it is an intermediary, has to ensure compliance with the spirit of law. This is the time where they have to demonstrate that substantive compliance through complying with the spirit is demonstrated to the world at large, to show that we are a responsible and a mature market which adheres to the rule of law even during difficult times. Now, this itself will enhance the stature of the Indian securities market. Of course, the respective listed companies and other participants, which itself will attract new participants with a willingness to whether to take a stake or whether to make an investment or whatever it is, irrespective of the from which country they are coming. So this is actually, in my view, I've been seeing 30 years of this market, starting from Akshat Mehta scam to Ketan Parekh scam, 2008 crisis, and different points of time, been seeing in this market. This is an opportune time to demonstrate our, ability to stand up and ensure that we are up to the game. It is not that we were waiting for an opportunity to buckle so that we can take advantage of so many loopholes here and there. Now, having said that, coming specifically to the capital raising, SEBI has been always, coming out with enabling provisions to facilitate raising of capital. Now, the first and foremost is that this, as far as digitization is concerned, I think SEBI has already clarified offer documents can be filed on online. The other market participants are filing so many things with SEBI only by online. We don't need paper. We have in fact announced 50% of the fees itself. We are the first one to forego the fees from our end. How they will pay our day-to-day expenses, that's a different thing. But to the brokers as well as to the companies on filing of various offer documents, we said that let us forego the 50% fees. Now, whatever is the difficulties they face, if they now, for example, the observation letters which have already been issued, the validity has been extended. And I think if I go each and every one, we said that for a rights issue, minimum subscription has been brought down. So like that, there are many relaxations which have already been given. And I can tell you that SEBI is open to entertain if any specific request is coming from a specific company or even from a group of sectoral issues. For example, you being there, interacting with SEBI for a long time, at least we have never allowed extension of time for conversion of warrants. I think, at least to the best of my knowledge, in 30 years, we have never allowed extension of time for warrants. But in a recent case, when the real difficulty was expressed and the amount involved was substantially high, when the request was made, SEBI without waiting for any, modification in the act, enabling provision, this, that, nothing to worry about that. SEBI simply clarified and granted extension of time. So we as a regulator, I can proudly say we are proactive, and our aim is to facilitate ease of compliance. We are open for that. You come with the scheme where there is a problem, and if you have the solution, please tell us. Otherwise, you say, this is my problem, we will try to find a solution. That much we are open for that.
That's very, very helpful. So your message to the corporate is, A, comply in spirit, rise to the occasion, and we as the regulator are there in order to help you for all your endeavors, what you want to do as far as capital raising is concerned or as far as the market is concerned. That's very, very helpful, and that's extremely proactive. And I must congratulate that, yes, 50% of the fees to be waived is a big which SEBI has taken. Only on a lighter vein, I would say that SEBI can give such concession on the fines and on the penalties as well, and they can give 50% waiver on the settlement fees, on the fines, on the penalties, and on the disgorgement. All of that. This is only on a lighter vein.
No, I can also clarify on that, because the settlement fees we collect or anything goes to Consolidated Fund of India. So it will be a challenge for SEBI to unilaterally take a decision, because tomorrow Government of India should not tell that what the government would have received, SEBI has taken away that money and or provided to somebody. As far as fee is concerned, it is our money. We can take a decision on that, and that is how we have taken. So, and why do we get into settlement? I want people to ensure compliance so that disputes do not arise. And I can only tell you very frankly that please consider SEBI as your family doctor. Whenever there is a problem, you will not ask your neighbor. Lift the phone and call the regulator and ask. Today, nobody wants you to come in person, because in our office, when I conduct my meeting, they have specifically told that no outsider will be allowed. So please lift the phone, talk to the regulator. This is my problem. What shall I do? How to cope up with that? How to solve it? I am sure, I cannot say for every employee of SEBI, but 75% of the people will definitely try to handhold you and see that because if you are non-compliant, it is a problem for SEBI also. We have to initiate action, we have to issue show cause notice, we have to go through all these procedures. So it is better that you be on the right side, and we also want to work with you on the same side.
No, this is absolutely encouraging, and this is absolutely rising to the occasion to the last possible dot. I must compliment that.
Thank you.
Nagesh, now the question to you, maybe the last question to the panelists before we throw open. No, before we throw open the question answers, I would request Shailesh Bhai to give his two words of wisdom to the corporates as far as going forward is concerned, from a COVID perspective, from a compliance perspective, from a governance perspective. Nagesh, what would be your advice, or what would be your takeaways to the corporates, considering the governance, considering the present situation? It's a very general question, but you have immense experience in compliance and internal audit and governance. So keeping that in mind, and now you are on the side of the independent directors or like a watchdog. So what is your advice to the?
I will just say one thing, and this is where I think Europe, I am not. It's not that in presence of regulators I'm praising them, but you need to be reasonable. Is what we expect from the regulators. I think it's vice versa is also true for the companies on the other side. I think in that context, Harish Salve spoke in one of those webinars where he said in UK, people were told, fine, you can pay taxes even in the month of January, not now. So by something like 9 months were given. If we do that in India, people will certainly take it as a rule and then after January, they will ask for further extension by 2-3 months. This is a typical industrial way of looking at life. I think in that context, I've seen quite a few severe cases where there is a bank, I don't want to talk about it, they have across unilaterally have served notice of force majeure for all the branch owners to say because of these particular circumstances, we are unable to make that payment. Now, this is where I feel unless and until you are going to be reasonable with everybody, I think that you can't have a unilateral way of seeking concessions in that regard. And this is where I think as an independent director, our job is to convince these people very clearly, saying that be reasonable, be moderate, and exhaust all your options. And only when you have challenges, that is the time you go to the right kind of authorities and they will accept it. And I will tell you one thing, at least in the recent past and soon after demonetization and everything, with lot of digitalization that has taken place, our regulators also, and I'm not discussing because here Mr. Sundaresan or Mr. Juneja is there, even RBI for that matter, has been very friendly with all of us in that regard. And they have been very, very kind and considerate. So I think that's the message when we are sitting on the board, we tell people, be considerate, be reasonable, and that's what we think.
Perfect. That's helpful as well. Shailesh bhai, if I may kindly request you for the final word before we open the question answer session, please.
What I have witnessed today is the beginning of a superlative coming together of whole corporate India, all regulators, all professionals, all companies, to work together to win in every difficult circumstance. I'm so happy that mindsets are changing, and they must keep changing even more. We must reach out. We must make sure that what we want, we ask without any fear. We must be ready for a no, and we must also demand reasonably, because only when on both sides there is that spirit of wanting to work together that we will be able to make a difference and go forward. So this has been a spectacular webinar. Sanjay bhai, I must compliment you for the hard work you put in creating such a lovely set of questions. And I must say the panel is exceptional.
Let me pause. Let me interrupt you here. The questions are not framed by me. The questions are all through a team effort, and the team leader is Manoj Sunawala. And
so compliments to him.
Commerce under your guidance.
Compliments.
So please don't pass the compliment to anybody. And also, of course, the panelists. Sorry. Yeah.
No, but it's the panelists have been absolutely exceptional. I was so very charmed by everybody's remarks and so happy to see the open-mindedness and the desire to go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shailesh bhai. Thank you very much. Manoj, I think we'll have to open the question answer session. Will you be so kind enough to moderate the question answer session so that it becomes easier?
Certainly, I'll do that. First of all, see, there are questions from the various people from the audience, and one of them is, should SEBI do away with the printing and dispatching of annual reports this year in view of practical difficulties?
Manoj, sorry, Savitri Ben has gone off because the question may be towards her as well. So I will switch off my video then.
You please wait. They will be, organizers will be managing it.
Okay.
Hiral bhai, can you do the juggling? Okay. So one more question was.
Otherwise, let me go out. Let Savitri Ben come in because she is the company secretary and I think more related to MC.
Okay, I will need to go on the air for 10 minutes. I'm sorry, I'll have to switch off. My apologies, but there is something which is which requires my presence. I'm sorry, it's been a wonderful experience being on the panel. Thank you very much.
But you are there for 10
it's
minutes, right?
easy for me to go off. Don't worry about it. I will go off.
Everybody is trying to sacrifice. Hello. Fine. No issues. Now the question to Mr. Juneja ji, how MCA would regulate non-payment compliances to MSME by extracting data from MSME returns? If this is done, it would be great help, else everyone will escape by giving COVID reasons for MSME payment within 45 days. Mr. Juneja. Mr. Juneja, am I audible? Hello?
Okay. You are audible? Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So the question is good, and all I can say is our MCA database is very robust database, and we can capture these type of data from the database, and certainly we can take out those reports. It is possible. But let us see if these issues are received by us in a structured manner, and if there are any instances. As of now, in routine manner also, COVID or no COVID, we have been receiving certain stray complaints from SMEs for non-payment of their dues by certain companies. We do address those complaints also, and if and certainly our data is capable of taking that database, of course.
Thank you very much. The earlier question, which was addressed to Mr. Sundaresan sir,
Yes, sir.
can SEBI do away with the printing and dispatching of annual reports this year for companies?
Yes, sir.
Listed companies?
Yes. In this regard, SEBI received a representation from a leading industry association, and it has been internally examined. If you see the legal provisions, Section 136, one of Companies Act says that the financial statements of a company, along with the other reports like auditors report, boards report, shall be sent to every member of a company. Okay. Now, taking clue from that 136, in LODR, in Regulation 36, we have provided the medium of sending that. So we have actually, to cut short the simple response, we have recommended to the MCA that this is a request to be considered, and because the problem is, if you send by email, a person who has not registered email, or a person does not claims that he is not having an email, it will become a non-compliance with Section 136, one of the Companies Act. Because what our LODR says is, first you send it in a soft copy in respect of people who have registered via email ID. Those who have not registered, please send it by post. And those who are asking for the detailed one, you please give it to them. So we have only provided the means and ways of sending it. But if you say that sending by soft copy is enough, and there is a shareholder who says that I don't have an email, so I have not received, per se, SEBI has no problem. SEBI will not get into the issue, but it will tantamount to violation of Companies Act 136, and then again read with LODR and all. So we are taking up the matter with MCA. We will try to facilitate this. We are very optimistically looking into that.
So nice of you, sir. Thank you. The next question is for Mr. Juneja. Sir, as per Companies Act, newspaper publication is required to be made for sifting of registered office, sifting of merger and amalgamation, etc. Relaxation has only been provided with respect to forms, but for the newspaper publication, etc. So whether can we expect this in sometime near future?
Look, there is a logic behind such a provision. The logic of this is to receive complaints and objections, if any, from general public and stakeholders in case of shifting of registered officer, merger, etc. So as of now, there is no such suggestion or no such proposal under consideration, and I don't see how COVID comes into play to grant such of exemption for publication, because The spirit is that everybody, every stakeholder must have a chance to represent in these two vital, changes which are going to take place.
Okay, thank you, sir. Due to paucity of time, now we have to close this question answer session, and I would request Mr. Sandeep Khosla, who is a DG designate from BCCI, to offer his vote of thanks and closing remarks. Mr. Khosla, please.
Yeah, thank you, Manoj. Thanks a lot. On behalf of the Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I would like to thank all the participants for making this, coming in huge numbers and making this a huge success. Thank you, participants, Mr. Pinge, Mr. Sundaresan, Juneja ji, Savitri Ben, and Sanjay Asher for conducting this, moderating this in such a good manner. My special thanks to Sri Shailesh ji for his keynote speech, and his experience shows over such a long period, and I'm sure some of his advice will be looked at by most of the participants in both letter and spirit. The only small thing I want to mention, what I could make out, is he gave an example of Tata TCS having 75% of the people operating from home. Now, I'm sure Tata is not considered as to what is going to happen to two other Tata companies, which are Tata Steel and Tata Housing, because there they are going to suffer. If a lot of these companies are not going to take office rentals, then it's going to be a problem. So, in the discussion, there was this V mention or W. The problem is how deep these are going to run. How much time is it going to take for us to bounce back? That becomes very crucial. And some of the industries are going to take a huge time to bounce back. The airline industry, the hospitality industry, theater. I do not know whether movies of the scale of Bahubali would ever be made again, because if we shift to digital, then I don't see investment of 400, 500, 800 crores happening there. So these are all food for thought, and I'm sure given some other day we could discuss that. I would just like to thank some of our co-partners here, WIRC. I would like to thank CA Lalit Bajaj ji, CA Murtaza Kanchwala for supporting us here. I would like to similarly thank the knowledge partners, Intuit Consulting, Jangu Dalal and Mr. Bajpai. Thank you, Hirabai Shah and Advocate Sejal for conducting this. Last and not least, Manoj and Manayog GRC advisors for putting this together. This is just the start of a series, and as we go along, I'm sure we will have more and more different topics and more participants. Just a small thing, Vijay at the start mentioned, our Director General Vijay mentioned that among the various activities we are doing is the certificate of origin. Now we have had a lot of members writing to us, calling us up desperately, saying our goods are ready to ship or already shipped. What do? We need this certificate. Office is closed. Everything is closed. We have gone digital. We are among the first ones to go digital. We somehow had a digital signature. We, got one of the taxis approved by an hospital to go and collect those and deliver it to us, because otherwise we can't go out. And we've already started this. So digital signature is going to help. And some areas digital will have to ultimately go. Some areas, like I said, wait and watch, and what happens later on, only time will tell. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for this wonderful session. And Bombay Chamber is regularly conducting these. You could come to our website and see as to how many others we are conducting. So thank you, participants and panelists once again. And thank you, Manoj.
Before we exactly close down, I have one announcement to make. Tomorrow also we have one very good session where we will be discussing the director's board sustainability problems and difficulties and how effectively we can resolve those. And we have a very good panel, including Mr. Bajpai, GN Bajpai, ex-AB chairman, as our keynote speaker. You will get your circular in your WhatsApp or email, and you can tomorrow also you can log in similarly. At same time, 5 o'clock we will be starting tomorrow also. This series is going to take 3 more days, that is 30th, 1st and 2nd. So please do join. All the sessions are very interesting and helpful for all professionals. So please take benefit of that. I must thank Mr. Murtuja, who is now to be seen on the screen. Mr. Murtuja, he was very proactively helping us in setting up all these webinars, and he is the key person, apart from Mr. Lalit Bajaj, in getting WRC on the board. Thank you, Mr. Murtuja, for that.
Thank you.
And I officially now close this session. Thank you all once again from my side also. Thank you very much.
Thank you.